our Earth exists because of certain cycles that take place on Earth. And there's the biochemical cycles, like the oxygen. Again, breathe, then you would know that it was the oxygen cycle, the nitrogen cycle, and of course, important to plants, of course, is the carbon cycle. And then there's other cycles, like the rock cycle. I'm sure you can remember back to middle school or high school when you found out about the 3 different forms of rocks and how they can be transformed by heat or pressure or other methods into a different form of rock. Well, like granite, okay? Granite is formed from magma deep underneath the earth. It makes its way to the surface, and then it goes through processes like weathering, through rain or wind, breaks down into smaller pieces, washed away down into a stream or such, and carries on down through that stream, settles, and through time, that's sedimentation. Another process, concretation, fuses that together into a new rock, a sedimentary rock, sandstone. You could go over where Carroll was and see those sandstone stripes in the Grand Canyon and the other canyons and around in Arizona and New Mexico. But when humans get in there and start mucking about with the system, things get changed up. I was pulling up to the beach in my pickup truck in El Salvador, and I noticed there was a flatbed truck, pretty good size, with wooden sides on it, and about a half a dozen guys with rags tied around their head and tattered shorts and shirts, and they were shoveling sand from the beach up onto the truck. And I sat there and I watched them. It was kind of like watching those people loading up that helicopter. You know, it was pretty fascinating just to see these young men shoveling the sand, scoop after scoop after scoop, and mounting it up onto this truck. And when they got done, they just tossed the shovels up on there, and they climbed up onto it, laid down, and probably went to sleep as the truck made slowly back its way, most likely, back up to the capital city. The next day, I was over at my friend's house, sitting out on his little veranda having a beer, and I looked down, and here was, I don't think it was the same truck, but it was a similar truck, full of sand, and pulled up across the street from where he lived. There was a barranca. Now, a barranca is like a gully, a steep gully. And right on the edge of this gully, they were building a house. And they brought this truck up, and the guys were laying down, they jumped up, wrapped the rags around their head, and they started shoveling the sand out into the street. They made this big, huge pile of sand right there in the street. And as they were offloading the sand, there was a whole bunch of other workers, and they would take the sand and they would make a nice, like, swimming pool kind of thing. And then they would get the sack of concrete, and they would put some concrete in there, and some water, and then they would mix that up. And they would just mix the concrete right there on the street. Nothing was measured. There was no engineer came by and tested it for strength. No, then they had the forms made with the rebar and all that, and they would just pack it in there, and they would get about half a column built that was going to support the second floor, and take a break for lunch, and then they would make another pool of sand and water and the concrete and mix that up, and oh yeah, well, let's see, we'll put that back in there, and part of the old one and part of the new one, and they're not really stuck together quite like it should be. But that's the way they did it. Well, I didn't actually see it happen, and I don't know when it happened, but I knew that it would happen, because it's that peninsula of land that connects South America to North America, Central America, very seismologically active. And I was there for 2 years and experienced a half a dozen earthquakes. And an earthquake will shake that area, and it will do destruction. And that house will end up at the bottom of that barranca. And not only do they have earthquakes, but they have hurricanes. And a hurricane will come through there every year, 1, maybe 2, dump torrential amounts of water that rush down those barrancas, washing away everything in its path. And it will erode that concrete. It will take that sand, and it will push that sand down that same stream year after year after year, and that sand will end up on that same beach. That's kind of like the sand cycle. Well, there's the water cycle too. And you're all familiar with the water cycle. We wouldn't be sitting here on earth if we didn't have the water cycle. And, excuse me, the rain falls high in the mountains. It comes together, the drops coming together to form a trickle. And the trickle forms a stream. And the stream forms and falls down, down, a cataract, a waterfall, a small pool, but still down and down, until stream came to the edge of the sand. And when it tried to cross the sand, it was absorbed into the sand and disappeared. But the stream thought it was destiny for stream to cross the desert. Stream heard a voice. Wind can cross the desert. Wind can cross the sand. I can't cross the sand. Wind is light. Wind can fly. I can't. Well, what you need to do is let wind carry you across the sand. Well, how can that happen? Let wind absorb you and carry you across. If not, you will just be charging out here onto the sand, and you will disappear, or after years and years, you might just form a muddy swamp. You have a choice. Well, how does wind carry me across? You need to be absorbed by the wind. Absorbed? If I'm absorbed by the wind, I won't be a stream any longer. How do I become a stream? You let the wind absorb you. You need to change your identity. And with that, you will be carried up by the wind. The wind will carry you across the desert. You will fall again as rain and form a stream. How do you know that's true? I have seen it happen many times, the voice said. Stream thought. Somewhere back in Stream's experience, there was a remembrance of some kind of change that had taken place. And he allowed, Stream allowed wind to carry him up in a vapor and across the sands. And there he fell as rain in the mountains, formed into that trickle, the trickle into a stream came down the mountainside as a waterfall, a cataract, a pool of water, down, down, and down. stream was wondrous. That they had actually done what the voice had said. How did you know? I have seen it many, many times. And that is why it's said that the journey of the stream of life is carried in the tail of the sands. Thank you very much.